Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Comics Lair and our discussion of Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. The Comics Lair is sponsored by Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott. And let's start with the panel introducing themselves. Briefly tell us who you are and when you first became interested in Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. Gini, will you start?
Sure. I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series for Daw Books, and I also write under a variety of other pen names and in all lengths and genres. I'm a huge comics geek girl, just like my main heroine, Kitty, is. And I've been aware of Nick Fury for a really long time, potentially. I think even before the days of David Hasselhoff playing him. So, been a Nick Fury fan for a while.
Okay, Clay.
I'm Clay Griffith. I write with my wife, Susan, as Clay and Susan Griffith. That's quite a breakthrough for us. And we're probably best known for the Vampire Empire series. I've known Nick since the 60s when he came along in Marvel Comics, and I didn't like him originally. I liked him as a guest star, but not as his own thing. But I've known him for a long time, and I like him now. So stick with it, and you learn to love people.
Okay. Fraser?
I'm Fraser Sherman. I write film reference and other nonfiction. I also write historical fantasy. I guess I was first acquainted with Nick Fury as I think I saw a reprint of one of his Howling Commandos war story. Then he kept showing up in the background in Avengers and other Marvel books, which I occasionally read. I don't think I really got into him until I got a couple of collections of the Silver Age S.H.I.E.L.D., both the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby period and the Jim Steranko period. And those make me much fonder of him.
Well, I am a historical fantasy writer. I also write several different kinds of romance. And with my friend Jeannie Adams, I write the Outcast Station science fiction series. I've been a comic book fan since I was 8 years old, but I started out mostly on DC. And my first memory of Nick Fury was the book Sergeant Fury and His Howling Commandos. And I mean, Howling Commandos sounded, to my little kid mind, both interesting and a little scary. And I didn't read war comics, so I kind of sort of went, yeah, that's nice, and moved on to the people with capes. But then I really started to pay attention to it when Nick Fury, as played by Samuel L. Jackson, and S.H.I.E.L.D. turned up in the Marvel Comics universe movies. And then I watched the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from time to time because I liked Clark Gregg, who played Agent Coulson, who had also had a recurring role as an FBI agent on The West Wing. And there's your little bit of Clark Gregg trivia for tonight. So just so everybody knows the background that we're coming from, which aspects of Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. did you follow? Did you not like? Where were you kind of focused when it comes to these two, this character and this team? Clay?
Well, like I mentioned, when I was a little kid, I didn't like him because he wasn't a superhero. I enjoyed him as a guest star. He would show up in Fantastic Four and he would show up in Captain America, and they were old war buddies. And this was the mid-'60s, so these guys had been in World War II. Cap, of course, was a veteran, and Reed was a veteran, and so they knew each other, and he had been Sergeant Fury back in the war. I didn't read war books either, so I didn't know him from there. But I loved him as a guest star. He was cool. He'd come in and give assignments, or he'd hang out with Cap for a while, and they'd go out and bust up a Hydra base or something. There was something intriguing about the concept of S.H.I.E.L.D. It was obviously the 60s, so they were pulling from Man from U.N.C.L.E. and then James Bond and all that stuff. It got a lot more gimmicky as it went along. Originally, he wore a coat and tie and a hat and had a gun and maybe a flying car, and then he started wearing the tights when Steranko came in, and it was almost LSD time with the visuals and the gimmickry. And that stuff was mind-blowing. Steranko was sort of Marvel's Neil Adams. He just took comics to a different place, and his Nick Fury stuff was just something I had never seen before. But I didn't come to really appreciate it till I was a teenager, until I was really reading it in reprints. for one reason or another. But I grew to really love the Shield organization and a lot of the guest stars. Later, I went back and read Sergeant Fury too, and a lot of those guys who were his buddies became the Shield cadre. They joined Shield with him, so it was sort of a fancy ray gun version of the Howling Commandos, and it was a lot of fun. They were all great fun, and I followed him ever since, off and on. I don't like it as much in the modern day, the comics. I love the movies because they sort of went after Watergate. It was more like Nick Fury versus Shield. Shield became a dark thing, and he was trying to fight it more than fighting with it. And that, I know that's more realistic, but it didn't appeal to me as much.
Yeah. Fraser, what about you?
I didn't really start reading a lot of Marvel until the Bronze Age of the 1970s, and you didn't really follow Nick Fury because he didn't have a book. It just sort of popped in and out as a supporting cast everywhere. As I said, a couple of years back, I got the Marvel Masterworks edition of the early Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the first story, obviously conscious that they're competing. It's mid-60s, everyone is doing Bond, Man from U.N.C.L.E. is on TV. Interesting trivia point, in Marvel Universe, it's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the show in the same time slot. But in the first episode, we see Fury strapped into this strange machine. They create 4 lifelike doubles of him, LMDs. They go walking out. As soon as they emerge onto the street, they're all killed, which establishes Hydra is seriously badass. Then Fury is taken to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s headquarters. The car James Bond's car is bulletproof and it has machine guns. Nick Fury's car can survive a napalm attack and it has missiles. And they simply do everything bigger and better. There's also a great bit at the climax as Nick Fury's wondering, okay, I'm an ex-commando sergeant turned military intelligence. Why are they asking me to lead this group? Then he spots a bomb, takes charge, gets it out of the building, immediately starts ordering everyone around, captures a bad guy, keeps him from committing suicide, lines him up for interrogation, and in that sequence they establish, yes, Nick Fury was born to lead this group, and it's just really well done. And from then on, they keep going. And yes, Steranko's art, very pop art, contemporary advertising influenced, was amazing and took it to a whole new level. But the start of the book is pretty awesome too.
Okay. Jenny, what about you?
As I say on like every Comics Lair panel, I wasn't allowed to read comics young because my mother and grandmother thought they were trash. I was allowed Archie comics and Disney comics. And so I only got to read what was in the rack as fast as I could read it. I'm a very fast reader while my mother and grandmother were shopping. So I didn't get a lot of Nick Fury comics in my growing up time, but I do remember when I would hit them, when he would be a supporting actor, he just seemed so manly. And I was just like, I guarantee that because I thought Nick Fury was manly is probably why I love Wolverine. I can draw a direct through line. Okay, Nick Fury was manly. And I really was like, we should see a little bit more of him, right? And I'm pretty sure it was the Steranko version. I'm almost positive, right? And so it was really, I just have these images from, oh, here he is here supporting here, and here he is there supporting there. And he was just always, he's hanging off a ladder, off a helicopter with a cigar and shooting. Oh my God, he was so manly. And so I was just like enthralled with Nick Fury. And then we had David Hasselhoff doing Nick Fury. And as much as we want to make fun with it, honestly, I thought he did a really good job. I actually really enjoyed his Nick Fury. It was manly. It was what it was supposed to be. He wasn't really winking at the camera. He was playing it straight, and I really enjoyed that. And then I got in more. Now I'm more of a grown up, and I now get into my comics. And I never really followed Fury's single titles because I was really an X-Men girl. But even in the X-Men, Fury shows up in odd places as he does, and every one of them, like, he's so manly. So I just love the character. I like the way he was drawn. He really triggered something to my little girl brain that said that's what men are supposed to be like, right? And I didn't have a dad growing up, so it made, I'm not saying Nick Fury was my father figure, because he was not, but it made, oh look, there's this manly man doing manly things in a manly way, saving the world. I mean, I just have always considered him, there are points in time where he's like an anti-hero, but he's never the Punisher. I mean, he's always, no, bring it back. So I fell in love with the character like that. So, and then I love Sam Jackson's take on the character. He's just awesome. He's so manly.
Well, that's actually where I was thinking of going next. Is it's hard to say which version do you like best, when mainly, aside from the David Hasselhoff one-off, it's been Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury on the screen, and then of course different writers and artists on the page. But let's go that way anyway. Who's your favorite Nick Fury portrayal? Fraser?
I guess I would go with Samuel L. Jackson. Although, yeah, I like the David Hasselhoff movie, but I think Samuel L. Jackson wins. And like you said, there's not much competition. I do have a little problem with, conveniently, Nick Fury having a black son who is also named Nick Fury and is now running S.H.I.E.L.D., but that's not Samuel L. Jackson's fault.
Okay. Gini?
Oh, I'm torn. I really, Sam Jackson's a better actor, hands down. And I've really loved him since The Long Kiss Goodnight. And he's just so good at everything he does. And I really, really like him. I would say it's between him and probably the Steranko versions in the 70s of the comics, where he was so manly. Because anytime I saw him, it was like, ooh, I need to make sure I read this because that's got Nick Fury in it. So I really think those from the 70s, I really like the portrayal as well. But if we're talking live action, I mean, David Hasselhoff gave it his all, but he's no Sam Jackson.
Well, few people are.
Right.
Clay, which do you like best?
It's weird. Obviously, I grew up with the Steranko version, and that was Nick Fury. Even down to, the thing I love most about Steranko, if you can see the guy behind me, the hand, the Steranko hand, I was always fascinated by the Steranko hand. I used to try to model my hand to do that. I couldn't do it. It turned out more Bela Lugosi than Steranko. But the weird thing is, as much as I loved Nick Fury when I became a teenager, when the character's name comes up now, I think Samuel L. Jackson. That's he's Nick Fury now. I mean, and he was in the Ultimate line of Marvel Comics. That's where they got him from. They drew him to look like Samuel L. Jackson, I think, and then they cast Samuel L. Jackson in the movies. So that's how powerful his portrayal has been. And even for me, who loves, the manly guy with the eye patch back there, I think Samuel L. Jackson when I hear Nick Fury.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I never really paid much attention to him in the comic books. And so Samuel L. Jackson is the only portrayal I really remember. And I give David Hasselhoff kudos for stepping so far off the beach. But
I loved it in Germany. It was a huge hit. I'm not even making that up.
It brought down the Berlin Wall.
I've got to say,
Hasselhoff is to Germany as Jerry Lewis is to France. No one can understand it, but that's how it is. So it actually was a hit in Germany.
And whoever wrote the movie, they obviously knew something of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the current time, because they had a lot of the characters from the Nick Fury agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. that was in the comics at the time. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, of the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in page or screen, who's one of your favorites? Gini, will you start?
I love Maria Hill. I love what they did with her. I love how at the first Avengers, you really think this chick is going to be the one who backstabs him, and instead turns out to be the one who is his most loyal supporter, the only person literally in the agency he can trust, other than, Captain America. So I really love what they did with her. I going to the movies, I thought, Robert Redford's portrayal during the big thing, and then Fury looking at it, this kind of stuff is the reason why I have trust issues. It's so awesome. So I think they've done a good job, but Maria Hill is definitely my favorite. I loved Coulson. I really did. And I truly resented that. I realize it happens in comics all the time. I resented that they brought him back for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It made the sacrifice and the reactions of the Avengers from the movie, to me, it just took them away. It belittled them. Oh, yeah, but he's back. He went to Tahiti and he's alive again. Oh, that you guys don't ever get to know, but you get to think he's dead. But the rest of us, he's alive. I just hated that. And I couldn't get past that in the show. But so I loved Coulson right up until his death was so meaningful. And then to my mind, they took it away. So I love Coulson until then, but I still love Maria Hill all the way.
Okay. Clay, who's your favorite?
Well, in the comics, I think my favorite was the character of the Contessa, who they have brought into the MCU in a very different way. Maybe that's how she is in the comics now. I don't know. She was sort of, when she was used at her best, she was sort of his Mrs. Peel. She was almost a sidekick. She would go on missions with him. She was clearly his love interest. There's this famous page that Steranko drew, and I don't remember the issue number. There's no dialogue. It's just them in a New York apartment, and there's little small panels, and one of them smoking a cigarette, looking at a couch, looking at each other. One of the panels was a telephone with the receiver off the hook. The implication, obviously, is that they're going to have sex. They made them change that, so now there's just this panel with a telephone with the receiver on the hook for no real reason, and then like a cigarette in an ashtray kind of thing. But she was great, and she appeared in other comics. She appeared in Captain America a lot. But I loved her. Steranko was very stylish with his portrayal of her. She had the dark hair with the white streak, almost like a Bride of Frankenstein thing. But they were really good together, and she softened Nick. He kind of wasn't the cigar chomping World War II guy when he was around her. He was a little bit more of a sophisticate. And that was kind of a problem with Nick, because sometimes they would do him as almost James Bondy sophisticate with a coat and tie. And then other times he had his, shirt open and he was bare forearms and machine gunning people. So they couldn't quite figure out where they were going with him. But she softened him a little, and I loved the small bits when they were together.
Okay. Fraser?
I like Coulson a lot, but I think I will go with Jasper Sitwell. He was introduced as a rookie agent in the Silver Age. Glasses, bow tie, crew cut, tends to spout rules and regulations and salute every time he looks at Nick Fury. But it turns out he's also competent. And when he's later assigned to Chief of Security at Stark Enterprises, he proves even more competent. There is a great arc in which S.H.I.E.L.D. is going up against an organization known cryptically as Them. And Sitwell, who is ambitious, has been arguing with Fury and questioning the directions and his decisions. And one of the Them agents who is planning to have Fury put up on, is he competent to lead this group, charges, because Sitwell will be a great witness since he's ambitious enough to want to get Fury out of the way. Puts him up on the stand, and the first question is, what is your opinion of Fury? I hate that man. I hate him for setting a standard of duty and heroism I will never be able to match. He is everything I would like to be and can't be. And it turns out all their arguing, which was pretty stereotypical Stan Lee relationship stuff, was a fake out. They figured who the bad guy was, and this was a way to spike the dismissal hearing. And fooled me, and at my age, that's hard to do. So thumbs up.
Okay. Well, I have to go with Jenny in that Maria Hill is my favorite character too. She's an extremely competent, extremely loyal, smart, physically brave female character, and they don't make a big deal of the fact that she's female, which is one of the things I like about the way they use that character. And I think the actress is just brilliant in her portrayal. But I think one of the more interesting characters in S.H.I.E.L.D. is Sharon Carter. Not so much because of what she got to do in the movies, but because of what we later learned about her in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Because that gave the character layers of complexity that she really hadn't had before. And I liked her in the Marvel Comics universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe, but that portrayal in Falcon and the Winter Soldier added depth and texture. I'd like to see them go back and explore a little bit more at some point, although they seem to be making a big deal about, well, no, we're moving on. So I don't know that that will ever happen. So we've talked a little bit about our favorite characters and some of the things we like, but what's one of your favorite moments with S.H.I.E.L.D. in any medium? Clay?
Oh, actually, there's a, well, I should have saved the telephone on the hook for this.
You want me to come back to you?
No, there's a lot of moments. There's an early Steranko, once they went to their own comic. Nick Fury was one of those Marvel comics that split a book for a number of years. It was in a book called Strange Tales. It was half Doctor Strange, half Nick Fury. That there was business reasons behind it. And then eventually Nick got his own book. It only lasted a year or two and it got canceled. There's an early issue, it might be 2 or 3, that's sort of a Steranko's kind of takeoff on the Hound of the Baskervilles. It's this beautiful gothic thing about a ghost dog in Scotland, and there's no Hydra, there's no shootouts, there's no dreadnought robots. It's just this kind of cool ghost story. There probably is some Hydra agents at the end after all, now I think about it. But it's so beautiful. Steranko's stuff is so... His anatomy could be a little weird, but it was so visually stunning. There's just some shots of the moors and the moon and Nick and chasing this little ghost. Oh, it's a beautiful, beautiful issue. I love that one.
Okay. Fraser?
I will go with 2. Since you brought up Sharon Carter, she was the only woman Stan Lee wrote in the Silver Age who was really formidable as a fighter. She was... And where most of Stan Lee's girlfriends for superheroes were dewy-eyed love interests, she was actually capable, competent, on the front lines, putting herself in danger, willing to sacrifice herself and Cap to get the mission done. And that makes her stand out. And the second moment, it's also from Steranko. There's a story, the bad S.H.I.E.L.D. are testing another life model decoy, an improved one. It looks like Fury. They will set it loose in an arena and the agents will try to kill it. The bad guy has disposed of the LMD, caught Nick Fury, doped him so he can't speak, and thrown him into the arena. So now everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. is trying to kill him and he has to get across the arena to safety. And it is an amazing dynamic sequence. And it's one of the things that makes Steranko memorable.
It's a great bit. It's got one of those great double page, splash page things with the figure in the front and all the, it's fantastic.
Jenny?
I have a lot. Mostly, I mean, I can't even tell you which comic my image of him hanging on anytime I think of Nick Fury, the first thing I think of is this image. He's, hanging on the helicopter rope. People are firing at him. He's getting pulled up. And that's just Nick Fury to me. And it could have been in every comic, right? Where he is. He's probably getting pulled off that way a lot. But that's the first thing I think of. So that image, guaranteed from reading as fast as I could at the racks, has always stuck with me. But there are a lot of, I think, this is why I have trust issues is absolutely one of my favorite moments in the movies. Really, Sam Jackson just gives you, I mean, pick a moment, pick a movie. There's always going to be some good Nick Fury bit, even if he's only coming in at the end to do the recruiting for the Avengers. Jackson just makes it really, really memorable. So I've just got to go back to this is why I have trust issues. Because it's so funny, but it's also so true, right? This guy, Robert Redford's character is supposedly like his best friend, and he's the head of Hydra. So, you can get why you have trust issues. So pretty much give Jackson a line, let him deliver it. It's going to end up a favorite somewhere.
Yeah. It's hard for me to pick a favorite too. I don't have the comic book background, and in this case, it actually helps me because it narrows my choices. In the first Avengers movie, the mysterious council orders Fury to nuke New York, and he's not going to do it. And they override him with a pilot, and the pilot is taking off. And Nick Fury goes out there with a grenade launcher. He's going to shoot down his own pilot to save New York. And then that fails, and he pulls out his handgun. It's like, I'm not stopping just because my grenade missed. And then I think it's the same movie with the trust issues. I was sitting here trying to think, which movie exactly is it?
Number 2, Captain America. Number 2. That's Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier. Before I get to that one though, my other favorite one is in Avengers: Age of Ultron, and they're on the island in the sky, and now we're all stuck. We're just all going to die here, and Natasha says something like, "Where are you going to get a view like this?" And then Fury's voice says, "I'm glad you like the view, Romanov." And then the helicarrier comes up by the side, and that was like a yes moment. But I think my very favorite moment in the movies I think it is in Winter Soldier, because it's the one where they've ordered S.H.I.E.L.D. to launch missiles. And the little guy, he looks like a nerd and a bookworm who's at the console with a gun at the back of his head, says no, and takes his hands off the controls. And then I think the guy either says, "Get out of the way and I'll do it," or he makes some other kind of threat. And then Sharon's there with her gun. And it's kind of like, you might want to rethink that. And then the other guy's got a gun on her. And honestly, I don't even remember what broke the stalemate. It's just the fact that they let this ordinary clerk, and yeah, he'd had some lines here and there. His character wasn't a total walk-on for that. Be a hero is not the normal movie thing. And so I really liked that. And I liked the way you could see S.H.I.E.L.D. taking sides within the control room. And I thought that was a really effective scene. And I liked it a lot. So anybody want to add anything? Mention another favorite? Go down another? Yeah,
Jen? I will. If we're going S.H.I.E.L.D., not just for Nick Fury, Coulson's death is huge in Avengers. And you really don't see it coming. And I can't remember what his last words are now, but his last words are pretty much "you've really blown it" to Loki. And, and then when Fury puts the cards on the table, they're bloody, right? Mm-hmm. And after all the Avengers have gone off, Hill comes and goes, "I don't remember that he kept those in his pocket. I thought he kept them in his locker." And that's when Fury says, they needed something to avenge.
Yeah.
I'll nominate a Nick Fury, but not a S.H.I.E.L.D. moment. It was from Howling Commandos, which was not a good book. The Nazis were way too stupid and almost at the comic relief level. But there was an early sequence where, as a publicity stunt, Baron Strucker, the greatest warrior of the Nazi side, challenges Fury to a one-on-one conference. Fury's CEO tells him, "Hell no, you're not taking that challenge." Fury goes and takes the challenge. The Nazis drug him, and he loses. Big propaganda victory for the Nazis. But right at the end, as the drug is taking hold, he is still fighting and still doing his best. And it's just Jack Kirby writing the I will not be broken character that he could do so forcefully, and it is a great moment.
Yeah, they didn't get to do a lot of character stuff with Sergeant Fury. They had an early issue. He had a girlfriend in some of the early issues, and she dies. And there's a great bit.
Wait, she's fridged to give him an opportunity to get mad? I'm shocked. Tell me how shocked.
Well, she dies. I think he's away doing something. I think she dies in a Nazi air raid.
A suicide mission. He's planning to propose when he gets back.
Yeah, he has the ring.
It's the Blitz. Somebody specifically targeted the hospital where she worked, and so she's dead. And it's, for all that it is a cliche, it still works. And then he does go out to get revenge.
He comes back at the end. He's got the ring. He doesn't know. He goes to her house to propose, and they say, "Oh no, I'm sorry, she was killed." And you get this last shot. He kind of drops the ring on the ground and walks away. But that's like the only time you ever really get any emotion. I mean, some real emotion. It was a fun book, but it was mainly just shooting and yelling.
Yeah.
I just want to make a very practical comment. Every time somebody who isn't Batman, Bruce Wayne, or Tony Stark level, a rich, drops a ring, I think, the jewelry stores take them back. They take them back. All you have to do is say she's dead or she said no, and they take those engagement rings back. So you don't have to drop thousands of dollars into the street, because if you could drop that in the street, then you were buying her a really cheap ring.
Well, that implies how hurt he was. Even if
I know, no, gentlemen, I know what it's supposed to imply, and I'm telling you, as a girl, I look at that and go, they take them back every time. I don't care what it happens, they take them back. So,
did anybody want to add anything else?
Yeah.
We can talk on this forever, Nancy. You have to run us in.
Well, I actually wanted to put in, I know it was not a favorite of Jenny's, but I did watch the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show up until the time they started moving it all around on the time. And I don't have the brain cells to keep up with that. So at that point, they lost me as a viewer. But I liked, in general, the way the female characters in that show were handled. I liked Adrian, whose last name I'm going to totally butcher. I think it's Palicki, who played Bobby Morse. And I liked Ming-Na Wen as Melinda May. And I think the actor's name is Chloe Bennett, who played Daisy. And I liked the fact that I was sort of rooting for Maria Hill to be in charge, but I think she was not going to be in charge for the same reason that Samantha Carter was not in charge of SG-1 in seasons 10 and 11 of that show. But I just thought that the female characters got more screen time and more to do and did it well, more than in the conventional ensemble show of the period. And, if you all see it differently, certainly feel free to say so, but that's just the way it struck me.
Who goes next? I'll go next. And then the guys can be positive. I loathed the show. I was so excited about this show. But with Coulson coming back, that made me angry. But I chose, everybody comes back in the comics. I was reviewing at that time for Slice of Sci-Fi, and we did something called 5 episodes in. And so if you took the show, you had to watch 5 episodes. And it was a slog. And then people were like, oh, just hold on a little more. I made it like halfway, and I'm like, I cannot watch this anymore. I hate everyone. I hated every character. Our big thing is suddenly you're a Hydra agent. Okay. I just could not stand. I didn't like the acting. I didn't like the actors. I like Ming-Na Wen, okay, but I like one person in a show. I'll give you there were plenty of female characters. I hated them as much as I hated the male characters. So when season 2 came around, they offered to let me review it again, and my answer was a dead quote. Captain America, as played by Chris Evans, will have to be coming onto the show and appearing naked for me to watch this again. And that's how I felt. It was just not, and everybody said, well, if you make it to episode 16, if I have to wait to double digits for I'm okay if the pilot isn't great and make it to shows 2 and 3. Okay, I can buy that. Your pilot, maybe it didn't do everything you wanted. It was good enough to get sold. But if I have to wait for double digits for your show to kick in, I'm already gone.
Well, it's kind of like the 5 pages in is kind of like the saying when you're trying to sell a book, the first 5 pages better hold the attention of whoever you're trying to sell it to.
Right. If your first 5 episodes can't do it, you're never doing it.
I did not dislike it as much as Ginny. I was not a huge fan. But since you brought up female characters, Nancy, that reminded me of the one episode that struck in my head as truly stupid is when they had Lorelai of the Asgardians show up. And first you've got Sif chasing her, but it can't simply be because she's an Asgardian warrior. It's because Lorelai killed her boyfriend. And so she is pissed and wants revenge. And then faced with a character who mind controls men, who do they send in the first wave to fight her? The men. Nor do they think, like, plug up their ears so you cannot hear her tell you what to do. And, that's basic stuff. And if they are intelligent, capable agents, they should have thought of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Clay, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, it wasn't. I watched very little of it. I mean, I watched it when it first came on, the pilot or the first episode or two, and then I missed a few, and I thought I'll catch up, and I never caught up. And I don't think I ever watched it after that. I like the main guy from the movies. I mean, he was fine. Liked him better in the movies. But none of the supporting characters ever latched on to me, or I never latched on to them. I felt like I was watching models perform, and I'm sure they're all great, and that's just me. It never connected to me, and so I left it behind.
I may have the timing wrong, but I think the Arrowverse was starting about the same time, and there's no comparison between Arrow and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, welcome to Supermodel Land, except you buy it. You buy everything that's happening. It's super well acted. It's diverse without making you feel like they're trying too hard, right? It's such a better show. I think the DC movies are awful, but their TV shows are usually tend to be more superior.
I agree with you.
Yeah. But
there's a few Marvel shows I like, but in general, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I sort of think the DC shows start off really well, and then they don't sustain it, and they get to the end of their run. And Felicity Smoke as Oracle just really made my head explode, because Oracle is one of my favorite comic book characters. Right. That has nothing to do with Arrow in the comic book, and it was like, ah! But and then the last season of Supergirl was kind of like, really. So I don't know. I really loved those shows up until those last things at the final seasons. And I can't honestly disagree with anything you all said about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because there's nothing about it that really sticks in my head, except I liked the things that these female characters did. And it lasted a while. It lasted several seasons.
It lasted so long, and I couldn't figure out why. And people you should try it now. And I'm like, I'd rather die. So I have things to do with my life.
That's a little strong, but okay.
No. Okay. Honestly, I refer to this as agents of shit. That's So it has.
No, we're not going to get a full quote from you.
That's right. No, exactly.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit and see who is your favorite opponent for S.H.I.E.L.D. or Fury, or your favorite problem that they faced in something that you read or you saw. And I've totally lost track of where we are, but I think it's time to start with Clay.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, the go-to for Nick is always Hydra, which I loved Hydra in the comics. They made more sense in the movies, because when you have a super secret cabal organization and they all wear bright green and yellow outfits, sort of defeats the purpose of being super secret. But I guess it's good advertising. But they're cool. I thought their uniforms looked cool. I liked them. With the yellow H, and there were a million of those guys, and they had the Baron Strucker was the leader, and then they had the Madam Hydra, who was Steranko drew so well. They had these great underground lairs with stuff dripping and lights flashing and weird machines that did nothing. But man, Steranko could draw a Lair like nobody's business. Those guys, I don't know how much money they spent on those things, but they were dropping rings and leaving them because they had tons of dough. But I loved Hydra. They were pretty cool.
Okay. Fraser?
I'd go with Hydra, Stanley, Jack Kirby, and the Steranko. After that, simply because they just sort of stuck around as a generic organization because they were there and they had marquee value and they just kept existing, and many strange things were done with them, which I only half glimpsed. But I'd say at their best, Hydra and Strucker would be the ones.
Okay. Jenny?
My favorite of his antagonists, I'm going to go movies, is from Captain Marvel. It's the Krill. I think the whole setup with the fact that you don't know, everyone you think you can't trust is who you should be helping, was just so well done. He isn't even sure if he can trust her. I mean, this is a regular person at this point. Yes, Fury's highly skilled, but literally an alien galactic war lands on a blockbuster in his district, basically. And he has to handle it. And not only does he handle it, but he handles, what you see is early people are, he can't trust his own people. The only person he can trust in that group turns out to be, hey, Agent Coulson. Wet behind the ears, brand new Agent Coulson. All right. So I really just loved the whole thing in there because at any one time, he is not sure who his actual allies are, and he still manages to get through it. And the Nick Fury that we're being shown is kind of a desk jockey. He is not the Nick Fury that we all remember from comics. This is like the Nick Fury for the movies. This is his origin story, essentially. This is how he gets his eye patch. This is everything. So I just loved everything about that. I loved him in the movie. I loved that he wasn't the main focus in the movie. But because I agree with everybody else, I think Fury works best when he is a major supporting character, as opposed to you have to follow him around everywhere. I think he works better as our fearless leader who is telling everybody where to go as a general, so to speak, as opposed to somebody on the front lines, even though he can't. So I just loved everything about Captain Marvel and his everything that he had to deal with there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think what's my favorite. And then, I didn't read the comic book, so that cuts out a whole lot of possibilities that I might choose because I just don't know anything about him. And then I was thinking, well, in the movies, I really like the part where the council is turning against him and then they think he's dead and he comes out. I thought, but that's Hydra. So it's so I guess I'm going to have to go with Hydra as well. If only because of a shortage of choices. So, we're actually running up on our time. Is there anything that anybody would like to talk about Nick Fury and or S.H.I.E.L.D. that we haven't already discussed?
When I was a kid, they had a character, and I don't know if he showed up in the MCU or not. He may have showed up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They had a character named Clay Quartermain. And I liked him because his name was Clay. And there weren't a lot of Clays, but he was horrible. He was the biggest jerk who ever jerked a jerk. He was so horrible, and it made me sad that the only Clay I had ever seen in a comic book was this loser. Well, he was this big, blonde, smiling kid. Everything was great, and he thought he could do everything, and Nick didn't care for him, and it made me sad.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add anything?
I agree with Clay about Clay.
Thank you.
I just want to add, I love all of the interactions in the movies that Fury has with Cap, because Captain America is, he's a man out of time, and he's a morality out of time that matters, and Fury has to manage him very differently than he manages the others, and he cannot do it. Cap can smell when you're trying to shine him on. He can smell it, right? He does not. he does not fool easily. And especially after the first time when they figure out what's really going on in the Avengers, he is never trusting again. He is not going to trust a government ever again, right? He's very clear. And everything that happens continues Cap's mistrust, but he trusts Fury because Fury has pretty much never lied to him, other than the one, waking you up, tried to make you feel better moment, which was, psychologically would have worked if he hadn't been at that game. I really like the interactions Fury has with Cap. I like the interactions he has with everybody, honestly. Again, because the character has to deal with these very different personalities and make them all function as a team. And that's not nearly as easy as that sounds in real life or in the comics. So I really like the way they're showing how the character differs as he needs to. He's clearly a father figure for Natasha, for example, though they don't come out and have to say, I'm your father figure, you're my daddy figure, but it's really clearly there. And again, I just like how he does it. So I really think the interplay, the script writing, the acting direction has been really good for Fury as related to the superheroes he has to interact with and control, being a regular dude who only has whatever science has come up with to help him. If Captain America punches him, Nick has a problem. Okay. If Iron Man puts out the suit and blasts him, Nick has a problem. If the Hulk smashes, right? And yet he can still manage these people. So I really like us getting to see that, and that it's subtly done. So we're not, that nobody's holding up a sign and saying, look at Nick Fury manage disparate personalities. So I like all that.
Fury and Cap have a really good relationship in the comics too, in the early stuff anyway.
Yeah.
It's different because their backgrounds are different. They're old war buddies. They know each other. So when they hang out in the 60s, they're older, they're not young kids. They've been through similar life experiences. And Cap he trusts Nick, and I mean, yeah, he could bend him like a pretzel if he wanted to, but he knows that Nick has put his life on the line a million times, and he's the bravest dude ever, and he's just a normal guy. There's some great issues with the two of them teaming up. This sort of mutual respect that Cap doesn't have, really for a lot of people. He's good to everybody, but there's a different thing with him and Nick that I think comes from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's World War II Army time. They can translate Army buddies in a way that people who've never had Army buddies can't.
Yeah.
Technical point, Captain America was not by the time the Silver Age rolled around, Captain America was like 23, 24, so Nick had about 20 years on him. Stanley tended to write Cap as if he were a returned veteran who'd lived all the way without being put in the ice, but he was really a young kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another episode or an incident when Nick Fury was having to mentor a young superhero is in the Marvels, when I never can remember if it's Kamala or Kamala Khan is on the ship with the Flurkin, and there are lots of Flurkins, and the way they're going to survive getting off is to have the Flurkins swallow everybody and then vomit them up. And, I'm a dog person, so that would not be my choice of a means to evacuate the space station. But I think it would have been really easy for that to become, it's inherently campy. And I think it would have been really easy for the actors to take it over the top, and they didn't. And so at the same time, she's doing it, but he's going, no, this is what we need to do. And telling people, yes, let the cat swallow you. And I love that scene. It's just so preposterous. And the acting carried it through, I thought, and really made it work, preposterous though it was. We could probably do a whole movie on the traumatization of people who've been swallowed and vomited up by Flurkins, but that's not our topic tonight.
Or who now have a Flurkin as a sidekick because they've been inside and back out and they're bonded.
Oh, yeah. The Flurkin Patrol.
That's right. Oh, I got it. Right.
There you go. More Marvel.
Well, is there anything anybody else wants to add before we wrap it up?
He's so
Okay.
manly. That's all I got.
No shield. Back shield.
Yeah. Boo Hydra, yay shield. He's so manly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then why don't you all tell people where they can find information about you? And if you have a recent forthcoming or new release that you would like to mention, this would be a great time to do that. Gini, will you start?
GiniKoch.com. I'm all over Facebook. I'm on X Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Pinterest. I have earlier this month the re-release of my romantic suspense set in and around New Orleans, Plush Life, came out from Ginger Blue Publishing. And next month, March, my first in my Falls Girl mystery series, Falls Girl, that I co-write with BB Bayless, is coming out also from Ginger Blue. So super excited about both of those.
Okay, Clay.
You can find us at clayandsusangriffith.com, although it hasn't been updated in quite some time. We're both on Facebook. We're on Blue Sky. I think Susan's on Twitter X. I'm not. And we don't have anything firm in the works, but we're working on things and hope springs eternal.
Okay, Fraser.
I am Fraser Sherman, Fraser. You can find me at frasersherman.com or on Facebook or on Twitter occasionally and Blue Sky. I also blog over at Atomic Junk Shop, mostly about comics. My historical fantasy short story collection, 19 Infinity, came out last year. I will have a couple of books out around September of this year. One fiction, non-fiction from my publishing company, Behold the Book.
Okay. You can find me at nancynorthcott.com, and my website also has not recently been updated, so just be aware of that if you go there. I am on X Twitter as at Nancy Northcott. I am on Blue Sky as Nancy North, and do not ask me why I made that choice because I don't even know. And then I'm sometimes on Facebook, but the best way to interact with me on social media is via X or whatever it is this week. And so my upcoming release is The Speaker for All, which is the next novel in the Outcast Station science fiction series that I write with Jeannie Adams. So thank you to everybody on the panel for joining this discussion tonight. Thank you to everyone who's watching. And thank you to our sponsors, Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. For more information about them, visit heroesonline.com.